guys in hopped-up cars. They think they own the road.
You weren't really angry with him. You've been wanting to slug somebody ever since you left the beach.
What happened at the beach had nothing to do with it. This guy asked for it. I've had 100 fights like this.
Are you proud of it?
No, but I'm usually in the right. I was this time.
Sometimes a bunch of films with similar themes come out around the same time, making it feel like there's some collective cultural zeitgeist that Hollywood is plugged into. In 1950, the first year of a long decade that would become known for its extreme paranoia, 3 films, which would go on to be known as classics of Hollywood's golden age, tackled not just extremely similar themes, but delved into the dark corners of Hollywood itself, fame, and celebrity, and what success and failure within the entertainment business can do to a fragile psyche. Billy Wilder's dark cobweb classic, Sunset Boulevard, Joseph L. Mankiewicz's All About Eve, and tonight's film, Nicholas Ray's In a Lonely Place. This film is a dark, bleak, and violent film noir starring Humphrey Bogart and Gloria Grahame.
Why, you blind, knuckle-headed squirrel, don't you look where you're going?
Take it easy.
Take it easy, look at my car. I just got a new paint job, $200. I'd have dragged you out of this land and barged it.
Dick! Stop it! Stop it! Let him alone! Dick, don't you?
Humphrey Bogart plays screenwriter Dix Steele, who has a violent temper, drinks, and hasn't had a successful screenplay turned into a film since he left for the war. Like a cooler, more suave version of Stanley Kowalski from A Streetcar Named Desire, misogyny and violence is inherent to Steele's whole character, and a fire burns within him even as he struggles to control it.
Go ahead, brub. Squeeze harder. You love her, and she's deceived you. You hate her patronizing attitude. She looks down on you. She's impressed with celebrities. She wants to get rid of you. You squeeze harder. Harder.
Hoping to push him back into creative work, Steele's long-suffering agent Mel brings him a book to adapt into a film about a widow named Althea Bruce, who is being investigated for possibly killing her husband. Before Steele gets to the restaurant to meet Mel, he's too busy almost getting into a fight with other motorists. The young hat check girl, Mildred Atkinson, is almost finished with the book meant for Steele. And so Dix Steele invites her to come to his apartment to tell him the story of the book so he doesn't have to read it. Mildred excitedly explains the plot of the book to Steele, who decides it's terrible and gives her cab fare to get home. The next day, Steele is woken up and brought to the police station by his best friend and former Arby subordinate, the newly minted Detective Brubb. There he's surprised with the news that Mildred Atkinson has been murdered and he's the #1 suspect. However, Dix Steele knows that his new neighbor saw her take the cab fare and leave, and Laurel Gray, played by Gloria Grahame, temporarily helps Steele get out of trouble.
Usually give such attention to your neighbors?
No.
Were you interested in Mr. Steele because he's a celebrity?
No, not at all. I noticed him because he looked interesting. I like his face.
I guess that'll be all for now. Goodbye, Miss Gray.
Goodbye, Captain Lochner.
Barton.
Through the course of the film, Bogey and Grahame fall in love because nothing says I love you like being a man's alibi. Grahame was actually married to the director Nicholas Ray, although their marriage was troubled and would end by 1952. Laurel Gray is a former actress whose career hasn't taken off, and Dix Steele is a screenwriter whose best creative days are behind him. They are both deeply broken, paranoid, and clearly oil and water personalities. After seeing Steele's temper in action, Laurel slowly begins to suspect that maybe he is in fact the murderer. In a Lonely Place is adapted from the book of the same name. Yes, a movie revolving around a screenwriter adapting a book into a movie about someone being investigated for possibly killing their lover. In A Lonely Place, the book was written by Dorothy B. Hughes in 1947. Hughes was a literary critic, crime novelist, and In a Lonely Place is her feminist subversion of the ultra-masculine pulp genre. In the book, Dix Steele is in fact a serial killer, strangling women on a monthly basis, while posing as a crime novelist who volunteers to help his detective friend solve a murder he committed.
You're an ex-GI. You know judo. You know how to kill a person without using your hands. You're driving the car and you're strangling her.
The movie version of Dix Steele is not a serial killer, but has an awful temper and becomes increasingly unraveled and violent, lashing out at the people around him as he believes himself unfairly deceived by them. Louise Brooks, the famed 1920s icon and silent film actress, wrote in her famous essay about Bogart, Humphrey and Bogart, in Sight and Sound in 1966, that Dix Steele was the character she felt most resembled the real Humphrey Bogart. The pride in his art, his selfishness, his drunkenness, his lack of energy stabbed with lightning strikes of violence were all shared equally by the real Humphrey Bogart, and that In a Lonely Place as a title described his own isolation among people.
I was born when she kissed me. I died when she left me. lived a few weeks while she loved me. You like it?
What is it?
I want to put it in script. I don't know quite where.
One of the things that works best about In a Lonely Place is that the only character who's more of an enigma than Dix Steele is Laurel Gray. She ran away from a rich real estate developer who wanted to marry her, becomes enamored with Dix Steele, but as he closes his grip around her, doubts begin to emerge about his innocence. Is that a true belief that he might be guilty, or an excuse to run away from yet another engagement? Gloria Grahame's life before and after her marriage to Nicholas Ray was full of unstable relationships, and there are parallels throughout the film to both Nicholas's and Gloria's life. In 1949, just months after Nicholas Ray's directorial debut, They Live by Night was completed officially. Although it wouldn't officially come out until November, Humphrey Bogart made a deal with RKO to loan him Nicholas Ray for the first film to be produced with Bogart and Robert Lord Santana Productions. This was Knock on Any Door. The RKO contract gave Bogart the option of a second film, and Bogart brought him over to work on a film adapted from In a Lonely Place, a screenplay which Andrew Solt and Nicholas Ray both worked on. Ray would continue changing and tweaking the screenplay while shooting the film. Originally, Bogart hoped to get Lauren Bacall as the Laurel character, but Warner Brothers wouldn't release her. So Nicholas Ray convinced Harry Cohn, who originally wanted Ginger Rogers, to get his new wife of not even a year and a half, Gloria Grahame, to be loaned out by Howard Hughes at RKO. Robert Lord made Gloria Grahame sign a contract forbidding her from nagging, cajoling, or distracting her husband, and putting her under her husband's control on set. Nicholas Ray and Gloria Grahame's marriage would fall apart throughout the filming of the movie. They split up during the filming, and Nicholas secretly lived at the studio in a dressing room. They got back together. Nicholas believed she was unfaithful and was having her affairs covered up by Frank Lovejoy, who plays Nicolaj, so he punished him by limiting his close-ups. Nicholas Ray later said, "I didn't like her very much." And so in a way, this film was a form of putting their own psychological strain on the screen. The apartments are based on the design of Nicholas's own apartment in Hollywood. The original ending that Nicholas and Stoltz had decided on was that Dix Steele would completely lose control of seeing Laurel leaving and would strangle her to death, with her death happening right before Nicolaj walks in to clear him of the original murder. But Nicholas Ray hated that ending, and so after shooting it, they cleared everyone out except Bogart, Art Smith, and Gloria, and Nicholas had them improvise a new ending that doesn't see Gloria's character die.
Yesterday, this would have meant so much to us. Now it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all.
Anyway, before I introduce the panel, please like this video and subscribe to the Movie Night Extravaganza YouTube channel. Hit that bell to get notified whenever we're streaming. Also, we are now monetized, so if you have any pressing questions during this live stream, send us a super chat, which helps me keep the show running and which I am obligated by international law, human rights law, to answer. We also have a Patreon, patreon.com/Movie Night Extra. All of our after parties are on there forever. We also have a new Discord and a Letterboxd HQ account, so those are two more places to follow along with us. Links are in the description. Okay, let me introduce the panel. Conan Neutron, host of Protonic Reversal, co-host of Movie Night Extravaganza, and frontman for Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends, neutronfriends.bandcamp.com. Kristina Oakes is streaming on Twitch at Cosmopolitics, twitch.tv/Cosmopolitics. Also recently joined YouTube, she's on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Cosmopolitics. Send her some subs on Twitch, and send her a coffee. Katie Baldassaro is the co-host of Movie Night Extravaganza, a director, writer, and actress who wrote and co-directed Girl in the Basement, along with appearing in horror movies like The Purge Election Year and The Devil's Nightmare. You can catch her voice acting in the podcast series, The Starwell Foundation, and she's the host of What If I Don't Like It, and on TikTok at Movie Runtime. Harry Marks is an author and classic film historian from New Jersey. He's the creator of the TikTok channel Let's All Go to the Lobby and hosts classic film introductions on the new free streaming app Mometu. You can follow him on TikTok at Lobby Intros. I, of course, am your host and a screenwriter who has possibly murdered an annoying hat check girl, Forrest Miller. I was born when she kissed me. I died when she left me. I lived a few weeks while she loved me.
Absolutely. What a quote.
Mm-hmm.
What a quote.
My favorite line.
So good. Harry, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I too am from New Jersey.
Oh, really? Very nice.
Yeah.
All the best people are.
Freehold.
Oh, I'm not far from there at all. I grew up in Springfield. I'm in Piscataway.
Oh, nice.
You two, Tony Soprano, Frankie Valli.
Yeah.
The Boss.
That's right. He's from Freehold too.
Sinatra.
Mm-hmm.
Harry, I already like you because you like this movie in A Lonely Place, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. So
In my opinion, it is Bogart's finest performance, even better than
I agree.
Teen Mutiny.
I absolutely agree. He's this is I love. Was it who was it? Louise Brooks that said that said like it's the most Bogart of all his performances, like the most like true to how he actually was. That's really fascinating to me because there's a wryness and like a wiry kind of ennui and sardonicism to go along with the actual darkness.
He plays that role to a T. I mean, you see it in Sabrina, you see it in Casablanca. He's charming. He's very off the cuff. He always has the right line to say in any situation. But he was a hothead. I mean, one of his first wives, Mayo Metho, and he used to get into it like borderline fisticuffs when they were married. And she was an actress too, and they were known as the Fighting Bogarts. They were constantly at each other's throats.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh at that. That's horrific, but yeah,
it is. I mean, they were terrible for each other, and they were, they were both heavy drinkers, and it was a bad time all around. One of the funniest stories about the African Queen is that everybody got sick on set except for Bogart and the director, because they were the only ones not drinking the water. They were drinking whiskey. So I mean, he was constantly with a glass in his hand. Yeah,
wasn't that was like homage as a joke in a movie once, right? If I remember correctly, that's funny.
I think so. Yeah, that makes the rounds every once in a while as some sort of nod. But yeah, it's don't drink the water. Drink the booze.
This is African Queen. I think was next year after this, if I remember correctly. Right?
It was 54, wasn't it? Was it 51? Was it that? Okay.
Yeah, I think it was 51.
It was 51. 54 was Sabrina. That's right.
Fun fact: Nicholas Ray. This is my favorite movie of his, by the way, but also director of a little movie called Rebel Without a Cause, which is what I try to get people to watch this movie. I usually mention that, even though like they couldn't be more different. But it's like, well, do you want to see another movie did this really great? You should check out In a Lonely Place. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But obviously, he had great success with that one. He had a real interesting career that kind of took a weird turn, like near the end. It's kind of sad, actually. I mean, he had a hard time in the later years, but this movie goes. This is by the way, when people ask me about the Criterion Challenge and why I do it every year, this is one of my first discoveries on that. And I was like, holy cats! Like, what have I been missing? This is amazing.
Was it part of their like Noir-vember? Because every November they put up a bunch of Noir movies for their November.
They do. I don't remember if it was on there because of that or not. I just had just joined Letterboxd during the pandemic, right? And then like the Criterion Challenge I do every year, where it's like there's 52 different movies that you go through of different varying categories and stuff, of which I never once have gone through in order. It's always just like
he directed Johnny Guitar too with
Johnny Guitar,
Cambridge and Joan Crawford. Ooh, they did not like each other on set.
Johnny Guitar. That's another good one. Yeah. Which is sort of like it sounds like a joke of like, I'm going to make a title of an old movie. Johnny Guitar.
Yeah. Well,
he's got a guitar and his name's Johnny.
Top 50s movies. They're like, oh, you ever seen Johnny Guitar? He also, like, after this decade, right? Like, he disappeared and went pretty much like to Europe and disappeared off the map pretty much, and came back and decided to become a film professor pretty much. So he went into the woods, and he and these film students, I was watching this documentary they made about it, and he and these film students, some of them turned out to be pretty famous. They created like this collective in the woods pretty much to work on these thesis films together, like, and they literally like isolated themselves behind, because they kept kicking them out of places that were like, they had a farm first, and they were like, you're too close to like, whatever, you're making too much noise. So they kept kicking them out of places. They finally had to isolate in the woods as like a film collective.
You're gonna scare the crops. Stop it.
Yeah.
And one of his last films was King of Kings.
Yeah. Conan, what did you strike off the Criterion Challenge that this movie was for? Which one of the?
Oh God,
knots
I don't remember. I'll have to get my top researchers on that. But it's been too long ago.
I can't be of help.
When you guys are saying that this is a standout Bogart performance, I feel like I have a couple of Bogart films that I've seen, and I'm comparing it to those. Like, obviously, you've seen Casablanca, and it is more in the lines of like an American Psycho performance, where you have this like, oh God, I'm not even sure if he did or didn't
American
do
Psycho
it.
For this.
Can you articulate more on what you guys feel like really is the like meat and potatoes of why this is different? And if I was a viewer who hadn't seen this film, like, entice me.
Well, okay, so one of the things about Bogart performances, all of the performances pretty much that he does, not all of them because he doesn't do it in Casablanca, but like Maltese Falcon, like a lot of his performances, he does this thing at the end of it where he flips. It's like a switch flips at the end of the performance. He does it in Treasure of the Sierra Madre too. And he turns into like this rage-filled, like kind of symbolically almost evil character. Like everything around him darkens and like this force just kind of projects out of him. And I feel like in this movie, he does that more than any other movie that I've seen him in. Like there's the entire scene where he's trying to get his friend to recreate the murder. And he's actually right about who did the murder and why. Like he literally is talking about how, somebody's jealous because their girlfriend is obsessed with celebrities and not paying attention to them. And they feel insecure about it. And he's right about that when you go back and watch that part of it. But in the moment, you feel like, oh, he's walking them through the murder he committed. And literally the guy's throat, hand is going around his throat and the whole screen darkens. And Nicholas Ray does this really amazing thing where his eyes protrude and the screen darkens and it's almost like a silhouette around his face. And I feel like
that Bela Lugosi thing from Dracula,
right?
Yes.
Well, and also you really get a sense of him as a storyteller, right? Because one of the things I love about this particular movie is that he's not a cop, he's not a detective, he's a screenwriter, and he freely says that he kills people for a living in his screenplays, which I love. It's great. Yeah. And then that's the moment that you get. Yeah, exactly. That is the corollary to that. Yeah. And that's where you get a sense, because you obviously see him writing and adapting, and it's kind of funny because he's making changes to the book, just like that they made changes to the book for the better, I might add. And you really get an idea of, oh, this is a guy that can really build up mood and really bring you along, because his cop friend is doing it and kind of getting into it, and it's sort of okay, I guess you got to suspend disbelief a little bit, but it all works. And it's one of those things that for me, all of his friends are I guess he could have done that, which is horrifying, right? Because it's sort of not that the crime itself is almost immaterial. It's maybe the third most interesting story happening here, but the fact that all his friends are yeah, I could see him doing that.
Well, there's
whoa, really?
I love.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
I just that one scene that we're talking about where he's describing what he thinks the murder would be and how it would go down, and he's basically getting his cop friend to nearly choke the guy's wife in the process, and then after all of that has happened, he's like, well, I'd love to see you all again. Oh, don't be a stranger. He almost got you killed.
It kind of reminds me of the OJ If I Had Done It book.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. Yeah,
right. Totally. That's a good one. Yeah.
But she has he has his hand around his wife's neck, and then she's like, "Oh, but you forgot the hands. You forgot I could have clawed you with my." And it's such a funny moment because it's he almost choked you out, but she's so invested in.
She's the pragmatism of the story. Yeah. No, but it's amazing because again, I think that's a key scene for a number of, not only the fact that he's scary as heck in it, it shows that he is a great storyteller. And if he isn't a great storyteller, frustrated as he may be for lack of success, I don't think it works, because the whole thing about this is when does fiction and reality crossover, especially with this guy who's a dark entity. But the thing is, he's not a monster. He's just a man that acts monstrous, and that's a very distinct difference.
Well, this movie comes around in a pretty interesting time, because the film opens up with him driving through LA, and he almost gets into it with a guy who his wife recognizes Dix Steele in the next car. And the two of them have an exchange, and Bogey gets out and nearly decks the guy. And we get right away, this is someone who is a hothead. He's, quick to fly off the handle. And then we later learn that he served in the military, and, he had served in World War II. And this comes around at the same time as a lot of, there's pre-World War II and post-World War II media. And this is definitely a post-World War II film. And, it's clear, and not at the time, but looking back on it, that he's dealing with PTSD. He's dealing with a lot of unresolved issues about the war. It's similar to Jimmy Stewart in It's a Wonderful Life, another Gloria Grahame film, because Stewart almost didn't do the film. He had just come back from the war, and he didn't want to jump right back in. And it was Lionel Barrymore, Mr. Potter, who told him, do the film. And what we see on camera is him working through his feelings. That scene of him sitting at the bar after he learns that the money's gone, and he's digging into his fists, and he's just what do I do? That's him working through all of his trauma and everything that he had gone through during the war. And this is these films just sort of follow a theme, of these men who can't confront their feelings the way they need to, and so they're working them out on camera. And I think there's a lot of that at play here with Bogey. He served in World War I. When he was very young. He tried to serve in World War II. He was told he was too old, and so he volunteered. He used his boat Santana to sort of patrol the waters, looking for German subs or something. I don't know. But I feel like there's a lot of unresolved resentment of not being able to do more. And I don't know if it seems like some of that comes out on camera here too.
Well, I think it's also it's like the meme, right? Men will literally become writers of murder horror fiction rather than go to therapy. Yeah, and it's like the early version of that. But I think that's really key because again, there is something to be said for how that manifests in media, right? And you rarely see that side of people especially around this time, that have that repressed rage,
right?
That isn't like, oh, they're just a one-note villain. They're just like this is the heavy,
multi-layered, more nuanced,
and that's why this works. Like you alluded to it earlier, the ending was changed, right? The original ending, bad. Like it's reductive. I mean, it would be a good movie.
It's too on the nose,
but it's too on the nose. It's the nuance is lost for it, and for a movie that's so weirdly romantic.
Yeah.
Like this is a romantic movie. When it has some.
It's a movie that's about love. It's a love story.
It really is.
It's a movie about love that doesn't change people. It's a movie about love that does not make them better people. They are still the same people at the end of this film that they were in the beginning. There's no growth. There's no change here. They're both very broken people, and they leave the film broken people.
The original Joker and Harley Quinn, perhaps? The original toxic love?
Don't degrade it. It
depends on whether she comes back. But no, there's something like it's a tragic love story, and it makes so much more sense. That like Nicholas Ray's own really fast marriage. Like he was married 17 months to Gloria Grahame when they got this contract to work on
traditional
this.
Hollywood marriage. Let's go.
And this marriage would implode in such a. I mean, I don't know. I mean, KT, you dragged up like stuff that says maybe the stories about their marriage and what happened in the end aren't true, but like they're
allegedly. We'll throw an allegedly on this.
Like, She allegedly got caught with Nicholas Ray's son that was 13, her stepson, in bed with him or something, and he found them together in bed and exploded, and like this whole thing was in the tabloids. Like it's this entire relationship that ends in. I mean, Nicholas Ray says when he's actually like being described in this movie, he says relationships don't have to end in violence. I mean, his own relationship ended in metaphorical kind of emotional violence,
or more emotional violence rather than physical.
Yeah. But like in this movie, at least, it doesn't have to end in death. At least it doesn't have to end in murder. And I think that it's such a vivid portrait of a relationship that goes by fast. And it's like a deep love. It's a deep love, but it's a deep love that just it wasn't meant to be, and it wasn't at the right time. And these people are not meant for each other. They're oil and water, and all of that together turns it into like this really crazy dark noir.
Yeah, this is why you date with the Zodiac you're compatible with.
Well, and even like his agent, right? It's like, oh, you're saving him. Like you're saving him from like this fate by like being with him.
It feels like the agent knows, and Bogey knows, Dix Steele knows what's going to happen. That line, I was born when she kissed me, I died when she left me, I lived a few weeks while she loved me. That line is so prescient for what's about to happen. He knows that this isn't going to last. And, we were talking about the ending, how it was changed from he murders her and then he's arrested for her murder after he's cleared for the other murder. But then instead it changes to, and spoiler alert, we're going to spoil the whole movie anyway. It changes to the two of them essentially part ways after he nearly strangles her to death. But they have to live across from each other, which is far more devastating, that they have to live with each other now, 20 feet away from each other.
Spoiler alert for a 74-year-old movie. But yeah.
I yelled that out as soon as that line and he walks. I was like, no, he still has to live across the goddamn courtyard.
Yeah.
It was
so brutal.
Interesting.
There's a moment
in it.
Well, there's a moment in it where it switches KT, sorry, I had this thought just as you were saying that. There's a moment where it switches and she decides that that he did do it, right? Like where she's seen him almost hit the guy with a rock and kill him in the middle, which is a classic. Like if you think about it as PTSD, like it is a classic. Like demobilized from World War II, the person goes into like robot killer mode pretty much. But there's that moment, and then you see the landlord bringing up the rest of her stuff, and you realize like in your head like, oh, she's only been here for like a couple of weeks now. And she's already like, waist deep in this in the world of shit, that she's been kind of thrown into.
Well, and by the time it gets to the end, she says it doesn't even matter, and that really is like, did he murder her? It didn't. It doesn't matter. The whole love story that they were never good together, whether or not he murdered somebody or not. Right. And I love that kind of like break of the fourth wall there. I was gonna say that what you've said about Bogey, Harry, about him being so troubled and not being able to participate in the war, that really feels like this hero that can't, like the hero that can't go to war. He's so broken, and it's so real in this, and that's why it feels more deep than, say, just a story about two tragic people who can't fall in love. Like, she really does need to save him. We really do feel like something that has happened here. For me, that's why it felt like, oh God, there's an acting performance that seems to transcend what we're actually hearing in the story, and I did not know that, so thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it kind of creates a trope that's not even I mean, it's something that's in movies, but also like in real life, women trying to save men who are troubled. They feel like it's their obligation and duty to do it. Like this is, I've been reading Lisa Marie Presley's memoir, and the whole chapter with her marriage to Michael Jackson was like that. She was like, I couldn't save my father. I had to save him. I couldn't save him either, and all that. But it's what's interesting about this movie too is that it was coming at a time where a lot of, again, with the whole post-war filmography happening at the time, we're not used to seeing men like this in film, it seemed. Mm-hmm. Like ones who are kind of like psychopathic, but also charming. It's like, we always think of American Psycho when it comes to that, like, genre of men. But I'm like, no, Humphrey Bogart was one of the first.
Or even kind of regular Psycho, right? Like, I mean, that's a different kind of charming that you feel from but like that kind of all-American boy charming that you feel from.
He was so quiet. He never made he never caused a ruckus.
A quiet boy.
Yeah.
This is always causing the ruckus.
10 years later, by the way. 10 years later.
This is 1950, and I did say this in our group chat. Like, this is under the Hays Code. I felt a little bit shocked to see the photos of the murder. Like, if we're talking about in the time. Like, okay.
This is where you really start to see the cracks in the Hays Code.
Yeah.
Because the Hays Code still had about 18 years before it was officially dissolved. But you really start to see this Night of the Hunter, when you see Shelley Winters under the water, like that. I was watching that and I was like, the Hays Code is still going on.
Do we still have it? Hold on.
Look at when they tried to do Lolita. Oof.
Yeah. But they're contending with TV. They're seeing more stuff on the news.
We had the
we had a GIF of that for like a couple years, Harry. That we just pop up now and again. Yeah, in the water.
Loaded.
God damn it.
Yeah, those crime.
Sorry, you have to make do with Nosferatu.
That's fine. Those crime scene photos in A Lonely Place threw me the first time I saw them. I was like, that's interesting, because those are pretty gruesome for for what's going on. But yeah,
it's almost as if they were more focused on like sexual content and like violence and like some gore was probably fine.
This movie feels pretty sexual at some points too. Like, I mean, like they're in the room together at different points. He's walking in with stuff. He's actually asking her, like, to come over, pretty much. And like, there's a sexual element that it feels like they got into the sexual relationship very fast. I mean, at least implied.
Yeah,
but oh god.
No, sorry. One last thing was, with the violence, it still adhered to the codes. Tenet of violence cannot be glorified. It cannot be made to look cool or fun or it's not Die Hard kind of thing. It's clearly a bad thing to happen, and so every time we see him nearly kill a guy with a rock or just lash out at someone else, it's still adhering to the code literally, but then there are these weird parts where it starts to break away and the code isn't adhered to. as strictly as it was even 5 years earlier.
I mean, the other one that it had is if somebody got murdered, like you couldn't show a murder and then let the person get away. They either have to have some kind of act of God kill them, or they have to. So the guy that did the actual strangling, at least the first strangling, he did get locked up in the end. They caught him.
It's such an interesting thing to say about violence as well, because I was having a conversation on a different show, Goodwill Podcasting. We were talking about Saving Private Ryan and whether or not the action in that gets too exciting to be like a good indictment of war. Like, can it be too actiony when you're having a war movie for it to be like, maybe
it looks cool. It looks like a fun place to be.
Cool. Yeah. Exactly. You want to be
as opposed to like Come and See or something where you're like, that does not look like a fun place to be.
Or How I Won the War. You're in the desert the whole time.
There's like that Truffaut line, right? Where it's like there is no anti-war film really, or because they all kind of glorify different acts of war in their own.
But I also see,
except for Come and See. Come and See is definitely an anti-war film. It also will make you question your decision.
As a not so much a pro-war, but also you're not really glorifying your war. You're glorifying the technical achievement of that film. That D-Day opening, is more about what it took to put that together than it is about how cool is this of people getting their heads blown off.
Yeah, somebody gets it in the head before they leave the dock. Some dude gets it in the head.
I watched that opening of Saving Private Ryan. I literally watched that in history class where they were talking about World War II. They're like, oh, we're talking about World War II. This is D-Day.
Yeah. We watched Macbeth. We watched it was from the 60s at some point in school, and I think it was Macbeth. It was Macbeth or Hamlet, whichever one where the king gets decapitated. It was Macbeth. But we rewound the part where he gets decapitated back and forth, and the head's rolling down the stone steps. In high school, we were like, we
watched Olivia Hussey's Romeo and Juliet, and
that's what I was going to say.
Fast forward the boobs, and I'm like, you barely see him for 2 seconds, and she like rewinded like a full 2 minutes of it. I'm like, we all have them.
Like kids aren't getting educated today.
No shit.
But to return back to this film, I wanted to say something that we were pointing about the Grahame character, how she is saving Bogart, but I also want to say that she's not really like so great. Like her desire to save him gives her a purpose, because until he rolls around, she's just kind of like hanging out on her balcony, getting massages. Like it's almost like she has to save this guy and help him.
She's a woman of leisure, is what we call her.
But also, she had it made. She was going to go off with this real estate developer and have her life set for her, and instead she chose this washed-up alcoholic screenwriter who may or may not have killed somebody. And even before she knew that, this guy was clearly not right for her, and she still went off for him anyway because I don't know. She loved the bad boy, or
because he had an interesting face. That's why she says it.
Look, Bogey did have an interesting face.
Maybe that really
and it gives her like a purpose in life.
Had the most boring face, and she's like, I can't do this.
Yeah,
I
can't look at this every day.
But real quick, going back to the earlier points, I had something for that. Like, I think it's interesting that he's flinty, he's misanthropic, he's a curmudgeon for sure, he's sardonic as hell, and then you get these. And you get these incredible flashes of just temper, but it also comes with like a casual brilliance. Like he is charming, and he's not quite an anti-hero, but it's darn close. And there just wasn't a lot of characters like that portrayed in media at the time. It was before the era of the anti-hero,
Right, and he's sort of this hard ass with a heart of gold, because there are these moments where he buys the flowers for the coat check girl, and when the guy asks, where do I send these? Oh, look in the papers. You'll find the address there. And then he sends the money off to the football star who he nearly kills. From Joe Squirrel. So there are these little moments where he has this lucidity of like, I shouldn't have done that, or this is a bad thing that happened, and I want to do something nice about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like the rage is like some kind of mental illness, or like some kind of. I mean, like even at this point, right? Like he does the thing, or like addiction, like he does the thing and then he has instantaneous regrets, knowing like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Completely.
Right.
But that's what makes it compelling. That's what's interesting. Yeah. That's what makes it compelling. Because if it was just like he was just a remorseless dick, so to speak, then I don't think it works nearly as well. I think it only works.
Very real. it's very real
Yeah.
too. Like if you read anything about people in like, you know, like abusive relationships or like anything like that, like there's always like a period of remorse after like the initial abuse happens. But and he's kind of in an abusive relationship with the entire world. I mean, in this case, right? Like he just beat up some random guy, and then but that is the thing that happens. Like, the abuse happens, and then the person goes back on it and realizes, oh, I shouldn't have done that, and kind of love bombs the person or whatever it is.
It could even just be a coping skill. Sorry.
Yeah,
it could be. Yeah. He's also beloved in this town. Like he's beloved by his agent and the people at the restaurant he goes to. You know, the guy who owns the place. Even when he gets into a fist fight in the middle of the restaurant, he still says, you know, next time could you take it outside? Let me get you ham and eggs. Let me get you the. You know, he sort of falls into that same trap of like House or Sherlock Holmes or you know these geniuses who are beloved even though they're assholes.
The affable asshole. Exactly.
Yeah. This takes me back though to a point that I wanted to jump back to that Kristina was talking about. When you know she's trying to save him. There's the Mel character, right? Like his agent is so happy that she's finally around and is like, oh, you're gonna be part of our big family. And part of that thing feels like almost he's in this kind of maternal role almost. Like he's like a mother hen that's constantly worrying about him, creeping around the windows,
right?
If he's all right. And he's like this mother hen to Bogey's like, you know, Dix Steele. And then he's hoping, oh, here's a woman that's gonna make him happy, almost like a mother giving her, you know, like hoping that her son finally finds a wife to settle down with, and then she can kind of watch over them both, but not really like, I don't know. There's a very maternal attitude to that character.
There is, and then there's also the more lizard brain part of it that like, oh, he's able to write when he's around her.
Yeah,
and
of course.
And then, you know, and both those can be working at the same time.
Yeah.
And again, even in what is, I agree, like almost a familial, you know, paternal relationship, there is like that kind of running in the background, which is again that deep cynicism of like the industry of Hollywood, which has only gotten better, of course.
Well, who does he have? Bogey has no one else to watch out for him. He's got his agent, and that's it. And then Gloria Grahame for 2 weeks. So,
but even the way that he open hand slaps his agent, right? Like it's not a closed fist. It's not the way that you would hit a man in a movie like this. It's an open hand. He hits it with like the more feminine, like, you know, like talking out of turn.
Ice-T told us.
Abusive, yeah.
Like a duel's gonna happen, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. It's
put him up.
I mean, it's fascinating. Against what makes it a fascinating character, and not just like, wow, that guy's a real dick. You know, I think of like, you know, some like Sweet Smell of Success too, right? Like, you know, there's like a great example of that, especially with like somebody that isn't known for playing that type of character either.
J.J. Hunsaker, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even the cop who is investigating him is his friend, and they use that to their benefit for his investigation. But like, everybody's just so nice to this guy who we kind of aren't entirely sure didn't do this.
Yeah, he may have done it.
Also, it's set in the year it was filmed. It's set around 1950, and they say to him, you know, you haven't had a hit movie since before the war. But they're still giving him all of these passes and all of the, you know, this leeway. Yeah. And I don't know, I'm not in the industry, but I assume if you haven't done something great in the last 5 to 7 years, you're not going to be given that kind of leeway. The directors of the Super Mario Brothers movie from 1993 made one bad film and never worked again. So it doesn't take much to get you.
It's anti-Italian discrimination.
Can I tack a fact onto that? Sorry, John Leguizamo did that movie instead of being in Philadelphia. He was supposed to be the Antonio Banderas.
Are you
character.
kidding me?
I think he made the right choice. Look, I don't care what anyone says. Super Mario Brothers is a classic.
Okay, moving on. But I think, Katie, I'd be curious as to your take of that scene at the bar where they're talking about, like, you know, there's the guy that's pumping out like the popcorn movies, right? And like in Bogey's character, like Dix could not be more disdainful and dismissive of his work and what he's doing. Oh, well, I work constantly. I was like, yeah, but look at what you're doing. And
he says you're a popcorn salesman.
Exactly. Yep. That's why I mentioned the popcorn thing earlier, but I didn't expect to have that jump in as a quote. But I feel like that conversation could happen today. Don't you think? I mean, it's like it hasn't changed at all.
And are you writing stuff for Netflix? Because people are going to get on your butt about that. Nobody wants to watch a Netflix original anymore. Right. But, you know, that's where the money is. It's really hard to say that you're working consistently versus you're working well. You want to be doing both, but the reality is you really have to be working consistently so that you can then afford to do the passion projects that you want to do.
Not to like be like, oh my god, it's because he's a man, but maybe it is because he's a guy. Like Hollywood, the way Hollywood operated, especially back then, is that a lot of the young ingenues would get old, and they were no longer viable young ingenues anymore. But men like Humphrey Bogart, like a lot of Clark Gable, like they were able to age up and have a success in Hollywood. Even maybe someone like a screenwriter.
How many times did they pair Jimmy Stewart with someone 25 years younger than him?
Just like this movie
is dating Audrey Hepburn, who could be his daughter. Like,
absolutely,
yes, exactly.
Well, and I think that's key, and that's also something that I feel is acknowledged within like the universe of the movie too. I mean, look at something like Mankiewicz, right? Like like I was not the biggest fan of the Fincher movie. I thought it was fine, but like I think it did an okay job of kind of showing that like deeply patriarchal. And also the fact that there just was less competition than there is now too, and you were allowed to develop. Like it wasn't like, hey, I made the Super Mario Brothers movie and it was a big flop, and now I'll never make a movie again. Or say Ishtar, although female director, so different rules. But
I also wonder how much of it is, being in this immediate post-war environment, right, where you'd assume that from everything we see of Bogey throughout this, he's some kind of war hero, like. He led his his troops heroically through whatever mission, and the fact that it's you haven't had a good movie since, like a good script or whatever, since the war. You have to wonder, like, is that also kind of giving him leeway, like you served your country, but okay, it's time to get back to work, like 5 years later, like you've had your kind of grace period. We said like thank you for your service, but come on, get back out there, get on the horse again.
Yeah,
pony up.
I could see that.
I think that it's like one of those, kind of incredible things that they managed to demobilize like millions of soldiers from World War II, right? Like, and in the immediate, I mean, you have movies like The Third Man where they kind of show how awkward and like insane kind of the immediate post-war nature of like cities in Europe, but like these guys are still struggling with PTSD. They're struggling with being in a situation where you kind of were free to kill, like you're freely killing, you're free to express that rage, and then they're expected to just go back to like a normal suburban American lifestyle or a normal LA lifestyle or something with no real effects. Like we don't really look at veterans that are having that kind of struggle like we did, like even now, like we don't really look at them as like almost like full human beings. Like we're like, all right, you could go kill for us and then you better come back and be yourself again. And I just wonder like how much of this movie is really like it makes that point without explicitly saying it
or being about that. Like it's important to the story, but it's not the story. Like this, the story isn't like, how did this man get this way? The story is this man is this way and there's a murder that happens, and it's not even really the most important part of the movie.
Yeah.
How is murder not important?
Right. I mean, but it does such an eloquent job of bringing a very realistic love story. Again, I think it's important that nobody gets changed. Nobody like comes away with a happy ending at all. In fact, it's completely brutal.
It's also it's the murder of like,
the scene. We're talking about the love story. The scene where he's giving her the grapefruit in the morning, and they're talking about, it's kind of a little bit of a breaking the fourth wall, talking about what they're actually experiencing right there. But I did like that they pointed that out to us, that like this is still a love story. What is happening here is still love.
Yeah, I think
wake up a little.
We needed it because there's so much murder talk throughout the rest of it.
Yeah.
Focus.
To your point about this being, it's a love story, nobody gets a happy ending, and I feel like it speaks volumes about Hollywood, especially during that time, and the industry as a whole, and also that the one character who is, it was weird. It was almost like they were in two different films. You had the coat check girl who's bright and fluffy and perky and very bushy-tailed and bright-eyed and everything, and she's the one who gets killed, while the sardonic, cynical a-holes of the world are, they make it out just fine.
And she's working class, like they're kind of living in this richer, and you really see that in the beginning, that there's these two kind of, there's probably like multiple different LAs at this time because of the whole, segregation type thing going on. But you do see like the class divide. There's these very different LAs where there's like the girl working as a hat check girl at I think it's Paul's is the restaurant that he's always going to, and she's just kind of she can get murdered, and it's like we need to solve the murder, but it's not as pressing as, let's say, like a a celebrity had gotten murdered, and there's this level of it that's like celebrity, and then there's this level of it that's, you know, even bigger celebrity that Humphrey Bogart isn't in this, but like he still is in this kind of protected celebrity bubble where you can really see that she is very much not.
Which is also, it's important to note that back at that time you could have superstar writers, right? Like that's something Katie, when we did Network on your show, I was talking about how Patty Chayefsky was like he was a name. He was a name you put on the screen. This was written by Patty Chayefsky. And like I think there were writers now that people know the names of, but it's not like how it was then.
Yeah.
They usually were directors as well.
I think it's
like
interesting
a writer
that
director. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. It's very hard with 5 people, like not in the same room.
I know.
You're telling me, kid.
It's interesting that, you know, going back to the whole thing, she's murdered and sort of nobody's really fazed by it except for, you know, the police captain who wants to get to the bottom of the crime. But this movie comes out 3 years after Elizabeth Short is killed, the Black Dahlia. And her murder becomes this sensational, mythological case that's still unsolved to this day. And
well, it's been highly suspected that one doctor.
Yeah, there was the doctor. I think wasn't there a podcast or a show where like the kids came out and were like, yeah, he totally did it. Our dad did it.
Yeah.
But like
they still do it.
Nothing's official, and so technically it is still unsolved. But you know, this movie came out, and I think that's part of the reason the Hays Code is able to be bent a little bit or broken a little bit, is because her case, her photos were in the news. There were all these gory details, these grisly details about what had happened to her. So it's interesting that, you know, this girl who wasn't an actress, it was supposed that she was an actress, but I don't think she really was. She had gone on a couple of auditions. She was a nobody. She was, you know, she bounced around from place to place, and she's murdered horrifically, and she becomes a sensation after the fact. And the opposite happens in this film. This poor girl is murdered grislyly, and, you know, nobody gives a crap.
No.
Well, and it seems like Humphrey Bogart solved it from the jump, which is kind of the amazing. Like he's hinting the entire time. Like there's that amazing line where he shakes the hand of the boyfriend, and he's like, and he's and the boyfriend's a banker or whatever, and he's like, "Oh, what a grip you have! That's from counting money all day." And it's like, oh no, he solved this from the beginning. Like he can spot out another person that's a GI. This is the first movie that I've seen mention like the judo thing, kind of.
Well, he says he's a people watcher. He says, you know, we're writers. We watch other people, and we pay attention.
And that's another thing I love about this movie, just like how tight and sharp the dialogue is. Like it's very clear that at almost every level, you know, Dix is on, like he has the advantage, even when he doesn't have the advantage. If he was in question by the cops, he somehow still has the advantage. Like he's always like the coolest guy in the room.
I mean, I think everyone would like to be questioned by a cop that's like their boys in the
well,
room.
Yeah, that you like served in the military with. Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, it sounds all right.
You're absolutely right. This script, I would put this not on the same level, but it definitely, you could do a double feature of this and like you mentioned, Sweet Smell of Success, which is my favorite film. You know, one of my favorite films of all time, and that script is just, it's perfection. It's poetry. But this is right up there. I mean, there's not a bad line in the entire movie.
Yeah. Now what Laura Bacall, you know, Bogey wanted, you know, his sweet Laura Bacall. How would you guys feel if she was the female lead?
I said that in chat, and I firmly believe he has better chemistry with Gloria Grahame than he did with Bacall in most of their films.
Jeez.
I also feel like their marriage was happy enough that it might have not been able to splash its way on screen the way that, you know, Nicholas Ray's deeply miserable marriage to Gloria Grahame, and then kind of using Humphrey Bogart as like the Nicholas Ray stand-in throughout this whole thing. I feel like the amount of pain that they were both put through. I mean, especially her with she was under her husband's control 9 to 5 weekdays or whatever. Like couldn't break anything, couldn't nag, couldn't cajole, couldn't, like they literally wrote that into her contract. And I feel like, and he suspected she was cheating on him the entire time. Like there's this anger and this resentment and this rage that comes through, I think spills through onto the screen of this like tarnished relationship that you really see. And I feel like with Lauren Bacall, like it would have been hard to replicate that because I, you know, for all I know about her and Bogey's relationship, like it was pretty happy, their marriage.
Yeah. This is I did an intro to this on my channel, but this is the clause that was written into her contract. My husband shall be entitled to direct, control, advise, instruct, and even command my actions during the hours from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day except Sunday.
Even added an hour.
I acknowledge that in every conceivable situations, his will and judgment shall be considered superior to mine and shall prevail.
Wow. And
Do that to me today? Oh.
Wow.
I'm ripping that contract up.
It could also have been a testament to how much of a pain in the ass she was, where they were like, no escaping this. The words are ironclad. Do your job, for fuck's sake. We're making a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those
like
things. Once you get targeted as like being a difficult actress or a difficult personality in Hollywood, like they're on your ass.
Oh look, this happened to Bogart, before Casablanca in the late 30s. He was getting a little too big for his britches, and he was like, "I want more money. I want to do better films." And what did they give him? The Return of Dr. X, a horror film, which he felt was crappy. And what was funny is he thought it belonged to Bela Lugosi or Boris Karloff. It was originally written for Boris Karloff, who couldn't do it. He was filming British intelligence. And Bela Lugosi was next in line. He couldn't get out of what he was doing, so he couldn't do it. So it went to Bogart instead. And Warner Brothers basically said, "You're doing this film or you're out on your ass." And so he said, "Fine, I'll do it." And then after, later on after Casablanca and Maltese Falcon and all that, he was able to rewrite his contract. He had more leeway. Part of the reason he did this film was because he had the ability to use his own production company, Santana Productions.
Yeah.
So it happens all the time. Judy Garland was kicked out of MGM because after Summer Stock, she was so bad off on with the drugs and the pills and everything, and her weight was fluctuating and her moods were fluctuating. It took like 6 months off production on Summer Stock for her to finish. So if you watch the film, you can see at different points she's different weights and different sizes and everything and different demeanors, because they had basically stopped production and then came back when she was ready to do it, and that essentially killed her career at MGM.
Yeah, and she lost roles, and also too, when they filmed The Pirate with Gene Kelly, you would think that those two had really good chemistry, obviously because of Me, My Gal, but like she didn't show up like 110 times.
Oh yeah, she was constantly calling out.
Yeah,
and that's a studio system, right? And that's something that people can't even conceive of if they don't know anything about it. But I'm curious, KT, you had a thing that you wanted to jump in on?
Oh, I was going to say that I really don't like when they have cast actors who are significant others across from each other. It always leads to kind of a perversion of the story. I mean, think of Eyes Wide Shut. I just like act. You don't have to have the like actual relationship in real life. It feels like a perversion of what we could be doing here.
I will say, I just finished the latest season of Only Murders in the Building. I won't spoil it, but it is. There have been rumors that Martin Short and Meryl Streep are dating, and you can absolutely see it in the way they interact with each other. It is so sweet and so touching. It's just they're really beautiful together, and there are these little the way the crow's feet form at their eyes when they smile at each other, and there's like all these little tender moments between them. It's very sweet.
So I will say that. I need to watch this last season. I've barely seen any of it. There are cases I think it works really well. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? Right, Elizabeth Taylor, Richard Burton. Come on, give it up.
You couldn't do it any better.
Yeah, it's pretty good. But I agree that like for the most part, it's pretty tiresome. I do think it'd be interesting though. Like Deanna Lee too. Also was like someone that they were thinking about that they wanted to have on here, which is like very different. Very different. And I think that it being these two is so important because again, it's really easy to focus on Humphrey Bogart, especially this is one of his more nuanced roles. There's a lot of depth to it, and it's not just like an easy one-note hero. But Gloria Grahame is fantastic in this, and like literally the only other thing, I mean, it's my favorite thing. Again, I think It's a Wonderful Life is in its own echelon. That's like not even like that should just be like it's a thing, right? It's not even like a movie. It's just like it's like a cultural icon, a moment. But other than that, this is my favorite movie she's in. She's freaking awesome in it.
Yeah.
They were also they were considering Ginger Rogers was the other person they were considering.
Yeah,
that's right. That's right.
Yep.
Yeah. There's something about her delivery on her lines that is very calm. Like it's very still mouth. She doesn't use a lot of her lips. She stays so close and so I really liked her performance. I don't think I would want someone else in there. That wouldn't work for me.
I completely agree. Gloria Grahame is very hard to read in this film. You don't quite know what she's thinking or where she stands. Like she's not like Mildred in the beginning, who's like, I'm here and I'm the coat check girl and I'm here to read the story to you and all this. She's very like she does not wear anything on her sleeve. She keeps it very close to the chest. So yeah, I think she was absolutely phenomenal in this.
I like that they blow away the classic cliche in this in the beginning, where Humphrey Bogart gets into something a little more comfortable with his robe and his whole thing. And then she's like, "Oh, I'm out of here," and he's like, "No, I'm just literally, I need to get into something more comfortable."
That's great. No, it's funny. And like it gives you some depth to the character that isn't like, wow, this guy is like a talented dick. Because again, he gets recognized at the stoplight by that actress. It rattles off some incredible, a couple of great pieces of dialogue that lets you know that, okay, he's kind of disconnected, kind of above it all, et cetera, et cetera. But like, that's when you get a sense of like, no, he probably just really didn't want to read this book. And like, this chick seems excited about it. Maybe this will be interesting,
Yeah.
Like, and that's all it is. That's all it is. But of course, like, there's the conceit of it being like, well, a man's taking an unmarried woman back to his home for, okay.
Well, he's got that tortured genius thing going. He says, I don't want to work on something that's not mine, that isn't that I'm not interested in. He's got that auteur attitude about everything, and like you said before, this is an industry where you need to keep working, or you don't get to work. Like you don't get to do what you want to do.
Yeah,
if you're not
what have you
making
done for me
popcorn
lately?
films. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And you can't be difficult to work with either. That's not going to get you more roles. So you got to write. You got to be so less difficult about the writing. Yeah, that'll get you fired. You could be talented, but you can't be that much of a pain in the ass.
He's on his last, like literally his last leg with that in the story in this, right? Like they're like, okay, like you've done the war thing, we get it, you're tortured, but like you gotta work. Like whether you like
this could be dialogue from the movie, by the way, but yeah.
But then again, I mean, look, some of the most difficult people to work with, including Bogart. Bogart was, on the set of Sabrina, was notoriously like nasty to Audrey Hepburn because she kept forgetting her lines, and she wasn't, he didn't think she was professional enough. But look at Joan Crawford, who is one of the most notoriously difficult women to work with, or Betty Davis, and then you get Baby Jane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the movie we covered.
We just covered.
I know. I watched that one, and I was like yelling at the podcast as I was listening.
I've worked with David O. Russell, so I definitely know how much extra time can be added to a film shoot because someone's just being mean and just so mean and yelling at the actors to the point where they're forgetting their lines and they're shaking and they can't get calm. Like, it is impressive how talented you have to be allowed to be that mean.
Especially when you are, and the reason they do that film is because they're at the ends of their career. They can't get work anywhere else, and they do this film as a way to get back into the spotlight. And so like you're picking your battles here, and you're trying to ingratiate yourself with Hollywood again that has forgotten you. And what do? You act like a schmuck to everybody you meet.
There's
we know
so hard. I was going to ask you guys if you knew what the drink it was that the lady ordered at the beginning. The high horse. I had never. Oh, the horse's neck. Yeah,
the horse's neck, and there's a so it's with ginger ale, and there's also an alcoholic version it's like the horse's neck with a kick or something along those lines. There's a derivation of it, but yeah.
You know what's interesting too?
Yeah, it sounds great.
I feel like Natalie Wood was a bit difficult to work with, and Nicholas Ray, he did not want her in Rebel Without a Cause because he didn't think she was rebellious enough or whatever. She got into a car accident with Dennis Hopper. She was like, "Well, they called me a juvenile delinquent now, Nick. Do I have the part?"
Yeah. Is that rebellious enough for you?
I forgot that Dennis Hopper was in Rebel Without a Cause, and I watched it before this episode because I was like, I think I've seen most of like all of like the big scenes in it, but I don't think I've ever just sat there and watched the entire thing at this point. And I was like, is that Dennis Hopper? Oh yeah, that's Dennis Hopper. Like I completely forgot that he was in that.
Yeah, Nicholas Ray's like filmography is pretty fascinating, and nearly all of them are hits.
Yeah.
So there's this documentary that they made about him, and it's called "I'm a Stranger Here Too," and like they talk about how like pretty much all of his films could have been called I'm a stranger here too. Like, because he has this outsider perspective because of where he's coming from. And so like all of his characters are either some kind of outsider or somebody that's stuck in this thing. Like, you know, even like the Bogart character, right? Like they're it's not necessarily he's coming at it from an outsider perspective because he's been out of the game for so long and like is alienated from everything. And they're talking in this documentary about how Nicholas Ray was like that too. He was not an insider. One of the things, Conan, that I'd sent to you, but he was originally Nicholas Ray was going to be an architect, and he was an apprentice to
Franklin Ray.
For a year.
And he hung out at Taliesin, the one in Wisconsin, not Taliesin West, which I've also been to, and like was part of his little like is part of his weird little like free work collective that Franklin Ray would exploit, which is crazy.
He went from there to the Actors Theater, and he became Elia Kazan's his protege.
Noted talented snitch, Elia Kazan.
Yeah, which Nicholas Ray may or may not have been doing.
He snitched in secret.
Never forget.
He had the dignity to snitch in secret.
You know how many people celebrate the anniversary of Alexander's death? It's kind of, I'm like, damn, people, and I'm like, you know what?
By the way, answers our super chat question.
Oh yeah, there you go. Exactly. We didn't forget you, Tom. He spoke with investigators secretly and
when the Red Scare.
Yeah, like didn't like go above and beyond or anything, but also didn't conduct himself well in retrospect either. Kazan was worse, but yeah, still a great filmmaker, but snitch.
Snitch.
Never
well, because they had their whole they had the Actors Theater, like Actors Playhouse, like they had their entire little theater collective that they were working on, and he was a member of that, and he was like. The reason that he ended up working with James Dean is because of Kazan. He was like, he was the one that directed James Dean. He was like, there's only 3 directors you should work for, and it was him, Kazan, and I can't remember the other one, but it was the only 3 directors that James Dean ended up working for.
Yeah. Oh, how funny! Wow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This movie working title was Behind the Mask.
Oh.
Is that the name of the book?
I don't know if it's the name of the book. It was definitely the working title for the
book was called In a Lonely Place.
Yeah. But they came real close to call it Behind the Mask, which almost I think is a better title, but I think it's actually a very evocative.
Yes, well, especially considering the whole like he's not just a misogynistic guy; he's a fucking murderer. Like,
yeah,
like he's being very two-faced.
Or at least he has the potential to be. Well, in the book, he is a murderer, and that's again. Yeah. So that's
he would have been too, the original one, right? Like he would have
the original Indian, yeah. But like in the book, it's very clear, like he's like a murderer, he's a sociopath, et cetera, and all of those changes for me are for the better, which is because it makes it more interesting as a character to watch. Because it's like I don't know, like a problem I have with a lot of movies is I feel like, especially generationally, people just want to like, this is the good guy, this is the bad guy, and like here's what it is, and it's like, okay, I'm sorry, but I crave nuance. That's me. Right. Maybe everyone else doesn't, but like that's the kind of stuff that I like. And I feel like we almost got too much. I'm not done yet. We almost got too much of it in the early 2000s, right? When you had the era of like the Tony Soprano and like the Walter Whites and all that. It's like, okay, there's almost too much nuance going on here, and maybe we can draw some distinctions and draw some lines.
Now, villain origin stories, like I like the villain origin stories, but I feel like
it's
you gotta make sure that it connects to the original. Like what you're gonna do one movie, but you gotta do like another movie or 3 to get to the point where they become that evil being in that movie that they're in.
Problems. Everybody today, they're looking at everyone's problems. Sometimes they're just a villain.
Well, but also, and something I'm very fond of saying is, everybody is the hero of their own story, right?
Yes.
And so the truly great pieces of fiction, whether they be movies, like books, like TV shows, whatever, will show you that aspect of things. They'll show you that, hey, like this is not like I'm going to wake up and do villainy today. This is, hey, all these people are, chumps and they're screwing things up because of this, and this. They'll all have an internal rationalization and distinction. But
time for some villainy.
Time for some morning villainy, yes. With some exceptions. I guess there's Pinky in the Brain, whatever. But
what are we going to do tomorrow, Conan?
Take over the world.
But it does feel like In a Lonely Place is a good title for this film because we're focusing so much on the place that we leave these characters and kind of the place that we even find them, because there's no journey for them at all. They started in this lonely place. They ended in this lonely place. There was a moment while they were holding hands in the darkness, and that's about it. It's good to
and the metaphor they use for that, even within his, I was born when she kissed me. I died when she left me. I was alive for a few weeks while she loved me. Like, even then, what you're seeing as like, outside of this relationship, where they ended up and where they started out is like the blankness of void, like non-existence, non-entity.
Yeah.
And then also physically, like when he's talking about that line and they're driving around, where like there is, especially if you're first time watching this, there's a legitimate concern that like, okay, this could go really dark somehow. We're in a very lonely place. Like, it's said aloud in the film, and it's like, I think it works really great. I do think Behind the Mask is really good.
Wow, Bogey, the place you're at is kind of lonely over there.
Exactly.
I do have to admit that line almost read to me like something that a Sphinx could say. Those 3 lines in a row where like, so what am I? I'm like, hope? I don't know.
Pass.
Answer me these riddles 3.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Man.
I think though that I really like the Louisa Brooks quote where she's like, Bogey's own relationship, because everybody that knew Bogey, everybody that kind of has conversations about him, right? They talk about the Humphrey Bogart that was like a real tangible person on Earth was a completely different entity in his mind, especially, but also in other people's minds from Bogey, like the screen star. And he was actually deeply uncomfortable with Bogey, the screen star. Never really reconciled that was also him, like as a person who wanted to be private, who wanted to kind of just sit there and drink himself into a stupor, who had all of these, like emotional and mental things going on constantly, and wasn't like this, this confident screen presence. And I really like that she's like, well, out of all the characters, number one, this is the one that most resembled the complex picture that you got in front of you from Humphrey Bogart, knowing him as a person. And number two, In a Lonely Place was his own relationship with fame and with the audience and with the crowd.
Well, and I think that's so important to note too, because for me, it's so important to have that line, which is seriously one of the all-timer like banger lines, frankly, like Sphinx Fiddle and all. But like, you never see this guy who makes his living writing. You see him writing, but you don't see what he is writing. So by him opining that, not only is it ringing in the theme, like, one of the major themes of the film, there's like something that's like rhyming with another one of the major themes in the film, and also it's a very poetic sentence. It's something that it's evocative. You're like, oh wow, if that guy can like, knock out bangers like that, he must be a writer that people are willing to indulge often and over various long periods of time to be able to put in the kind of work. Because when he does nail it, he really nails it. And I think you get that in this, I think.
And we never see any or hear about any of the other movies he's written. We never hear any titles or what they did at the box office. Just that he has not written a hit movie since before the war. It's this interesting mystery of like what kind of writer is he? How good is he? And I think that was in the original ending. The last thing was they were going to pull the last page off the typewriter because he had already written the script.
Which would have been so cheesy. I mean, like,
it would have been that whole
that would have been a much far inferior ending.
What was he writing? Oh, he was writing this
In a Lonely
exactly.
Place by Dix Steele.
I know, right? Yeah, come on.
Or whatever Jack Torrance was typing up.
Pens over and over again. All work and no play make
See, it's the movie channel original. Anyway, thank you.
Can I ask you guys a question for the guys who know Bogart better than I do? Nope. Okay, done. Sorry.
Carry on.
Is it in your contract, KT? It's after 6.
No, I get 3 questions for having answered the Sphinx. I know, coming from Flushing, Queens, and people talk to me about Fran Drescher all the time. And I know that Fran Drescher doesn't sound in real life the way she does when she acts. Bogart is a person for whom there is a very clear affectation of speech. Was that his normal affectation of speech, or was that for movies?
Some of that was he had a fucked up lip.
Yeah, and so it was alleged that he had gotten injured during the war when he was in the Navy, and that's where he had a busted lip and he had a lisp as well. And so a lot of that affectation is just naturally from what happened to him, his injuries.
They actually they tried to get him to fix his lip. Like his lip was so badly like injured. They tried to get him to fix it and he refused. And that's kind of
you can see it in the close-ups on the Criterion Blu-ray.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
No wonder him and Lauren Bacall, their marriage lasted until he died. Like, damn.
Well played.
They're both known. They
That's
both
so
have very
interesting.
interesting voices.
Yeah, but his intonation, that
Yeah.
nasal drawl that he has, that is so unique. Like no one else talked like that, and it's why I stand by the in my opinion, the objective fact that he was the coolest guy on film. He was.
Oh hell yeah!
There was nobody cooler.
I love Bogey so much as like an actor. He's also the first real anti-hero. I mean, maybe not like the first ever, but like on film, he was one of the first big like anti-heroes that even
that was the point I made earlier in the show. Yeah, I mean, they didn't have a word for it yet, but he was one of whatever it was. Like he was.
There was almost like a sliding scale. I feel like from like like a Sam Spade is kind of. Like here on it or something, or like a Rick in Casablanca is maybe all the way here where it's like, all right, he's kind of got a heart of gold. Sam Spade doesn't really have a heart of gold and kind of ends up being more than a little bit of a scumbag at the end of Maltese Falcon. But like I feel like this takes it all the way to like one side of this where like the amount of redemption that he could possibly get is minuscule. For what he's done throughout the course of this, and it's almost daring you to still look at him on screen and be like, oh, this is such a presence, even as you're like, this guy is a violent, misogynistic scumbag, but like at the same time, like that's fucking Bogey up there.
Yeah,
but he's so cool. I like make an accent that is the accent of cool. Like, how do you do that?
Yeah.
And then get
injured in the war.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why
way.
it's so hard not to root for him. Is in anything he's in. Petrified Forest, High Sierra, Key Largo, or Dark Passage is probably one of my favorite Bogey films, and he's the heavy in that one too. And it's so hard not to root for him because he's just so damn cool.
Yeah, a little fun.
Inarguably so, I'd say.
Yeah, a little fun fact. I cleaned for a woman who owned 2 pugs. Their names were Roxy and Bogey. And I told her, I'm like, you named Bogey after Humphrey Bogart, right? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, you named Roxy after Roxy Hart from Chicago, right? She's like, yep. She's like, how'd you know? I'm like, you have DVDs of musicals, including Chicago, and I see all these Humphrey Bogart DVDs.
You should have said, I'm on a semi-popular movie show.
Yeah.
Bogart definitely transcends the zeitgeist in many, many silly ways, and many even the "Don't Bogart that joint" is like don't steal the scene.
Yes.
Don't overlay.
Everybody calls cigarettes like bogeys. They're like, oh, can you pass that bogey? Yeah,
it's just so
there's
cool.
There's
you gotta be a certain kind of cool to get like just cigarettes as an entire thing named after you.
Yeah.
There's a play. It was written in 1969 by Woody Allen called "Play It Again, Sam," and the main character in that play, and then in the film a couple of years later, it's sort of a Fight Club thing. He's got this imaginary persona, which is Humphrey Bogart. It's the cool guy that I can't be. So in my head, I'm Humphrey Bogart. There really is just no one cooler.
Well, and that's what's so interesting about this is like you get that ineffable cool, you get that charm, you get that kind of like, oh, this guy seems like he has the advantage in every room he's in, every conversation he's in, and just knocking out like this the most deceptively savage takedowns over and over again, like it ain't nothing, right? And it's portrayed in just a much darker way. It's just the fact that like this is a dark dude. Like when it comes down to it. Like even like when he's very funny, it's sardonic. It's like very bitterly sarcastic. It's very like there's an edge to like everything he says, and he's just coming from a place in general that is very dark. And I think that is what makes this so different than look, Maltese Falcon, great. Awesome movie. And I'm not saying that there isn't darkness there, but like the fact that like just from fundamentally to the core, like Dix is a dark dude.
I think this brings the darkness up to like 1,000, right? Like I think I think you get at the end of Maltese Falcon like a flash of the darkness.
You get a little bit at the end as a treat.
They give you a little bit of that classic.
But like this movie's like darkness everywhere.
And you get like a hint of light as a treat.
Which is funny because the darkest scene they do that extreme light on his face. He is as illuminated as he is going to be in the whole film when he is the darkest he is ever going to see.
Yeah, his facial features, the things that you're supposed to connect with, are dark. Like you're supposed to, you're looking into the dark. It's almost like you're looking into a black hole, and it's like, holy fuck, is this crazy?
Fun juxtaposition, yeah.
And
Oh, cinematography.
There's like a almost Svengali-esque thing to his character in that moment, where it's like he almost has like this some kind of like almost psychic control over the guys that were in his unit. Like at least bro, like you could see him literally start suffocating his wife, and his wife's like, ah, and then he like snaps out of it. But you can see like almost like a dark psychic hold that he has over this guy, and that's the moment where you're like, holy fuck, like.
Well, because also it's charisma, right? Like someone like that is, you end up in leadership positions whether you want to or not, and so that's something that it's just what happens. And I think it's played effectively because it isn't like, oh yeah, that's Dix. He's the one who like says the stuff that we all do. No, nobody needs to say that. We know what it is. Yeah. We see it on the screen. We see him like putting the lady in the thing with the arm. You see it, right?
I wonder if a lot of the violence
see it in glimpses throughout the rest of the movie. Like
you don't need to see more than that. And in fact,
what I'm saying is like that's what makes the scene so dark and fascinating.
Absolutely,
you see the full power of the what this guy has over other people in his life. Because the rest of the movie, you see everyone's weirdly like deferential and kind of loyal to him, but you don't quite understand why until you see that one moment. And it's like, oh no, holy shit! Like the hold that he has over this guy is like is Svengali like in that moment.
But you also see like just real quick, like the like with the waiter, he drops that there's no sacrifice too great for a chance at immortality. Another banger line. The waiter just is kind of like, whatever, dude. Sure, okay, I get it. You're a writer. You know
that scene where he's describing the murder and the eyes go bright and everything gets dark. I wonder if there's something to, if he doesn't tap into the darkness and when we see him, nearly kill the guy after the car accident, if he does not tap into that darkness, does it get a lot worse? And is that darkness a result of his not being able to write for the last 5 to 7 years, that he hasn't had a hit movie since before the war, and it just keeps building up and building up and building. And so we see these like little outbursts, these little escapes of the violence, of the darkness inside him. And so he gets to exercise those demons when he writes, when he kills those people on screen. And because he hasn't been able to do that, he then damn near kills a guy, after that car accident. He has to do it in real life.
Like if Laurel hadn't been there, like football guy would have gotten got.
I wonder like how close has he gotten to actually doing it if someone hadn't been there to stop him?
Yeah. If she hadn't been there, like it's exactly like what.
And he's not even, it's unthinking, like in that moment, like it's deep, like he's not even thinking about, like it's like almost it's robotic in a way, like he
goes great white shark, his eyes go black, and it's like that's all he sees.
Yeah.
That's crazy though. He's so cool though.
when he's not
still very cool.
nearly killing football guys, he still managed to be pretty cool. Almost.
I'd still root for him even if he killed the football. I did not.
He was driving like a dickhead though. To be clear, like that was like
I don't do sports, so kill all the football men.
Wow, he's out of power. It's good.
Yeah, exactly. That makes it all right.
Everybody who loves football, you can send your letters too.
Yeah, seriously.
Send a self-addressed stamp envelope.
I don't do sports, so
I don't either. I don't feel the need to make pronouncements about it. I mean, like, but I think that scene, like the harrowing, looks like Mulholland Drive, frankly, that like where he's just ripping around the corners, like almost just not caring about the potential consequences of like what that could mean, like literally flying off of the cliff on the side and dying. I mean, he sideswipes football man, as he shall henceforth be known, and is clearly in the wrong. Clearly, like there is no planet that it isn't like he's not in the wrong in there, and just whatever, it's where he's at. It's almost like again when it's the more nuanced and crazy way of just walking into a bar and like knocking into someone to try to start a fight. It's the same principle.
Could we think about maybe that she is also part of the instigation? So she's present at the beach when they accuse him of maybe having murdered a guy, and then he flies off the handle. So maybe she is not only the thing that soothes him, but she is part of what makes him fly off the handle. Right. And he's flying off the handle so much now when he has met her as well. So it's like maybe she could be both the antidote and the catalyst.
Yeah.
But be the disease and the cure at the same time.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, they really do not go well together.
No. It's like my parents.
Well, I mean, but I like that. I like that isn't cut and dried either. You know, like there's definitely, we've all seen people that are in relationships where it's like, oh, this is not. No, this is just right bad.
The question for the panel: would you stay in a relationship with a guy that you thought who is currently in a murder investigation?
Well, they met the day the murder happened. Like, it's not even like, oh, they kind of knew each other.
You're his alibi for the murder investigation.
Yeah, it's true.
It's like the Penguin.
If you want a guy to you know, if you're looking for a guy to get attracted real quick, be his alibi, ladies.
Yeah,
be
there you
his alibi.
Worth it.
What was it? Gatekeep girl boss. What was it? Yeah.
Gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss.
There you go.
That's what I'm
Sorted
gonna
it
do.
I tried online dating. Turns out all I had to do was kill a lady.
Well, see, if you actually kill a lady and they catch you doing it, turn off. But if you may have killed a lady,
Yeah,
right?
No. It's the possibility that even your friends think you might have done it. That like that.
Did he or didn't he?
Also look like Humphrey Bogart.
He has an interesting bit.
Can you imagine the news interviews where everybody was like, "No, we totally thought he would do it. We suspected of him the whole time."
Which is totally, yeah, you're right. That's the opposite of the like, oh, he was such a nice boy, we never would have suspected.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, he's a creep.
like every single time you're like, oh, we would have never suspected it, and then details start to emerge. You're like, really, you would have never suspected it, huh? But this
It's like we knew he was crazy, but we didn't think he would actually take action.
Yeah.
Look,
No,
he said
It's like with almost every serial killer too.
We said he told us the neighbor's dog was telling him to kill, but we thought that he meant like in a video game.
Yeah, in a video game, in Roblox, all the blah blah blahs to avoid.
I want to see
TOS.
one news report where they're like, you know, did you expect this, you know, your neighbor to be the killer? Yeah, absolutely. He was nuts. I never talked to him. I didn't
like him. Real psychopath vibes.
One time I said, what are you eating for lunch? She said, a woman's eyes. And I said, holy shit, that's crazy. And I told the cops, didn't do anything about it. I'm not surprised at all.
I do dream of being that neighbor.
I do think, though, getting back to this, I think that it helps to me that the characters are so very human, because it's all about like the rage that like lurks in all of us, from like insecurities, inadequacies, self-loathing, whatever, right? You know, and how does that manifest? Sometimes it's used to hurt others. Sometimes you backpedal it and, you know, like whatever, try to smooth over or love bomb it, apparently. But I think that it's very captivating because it dooms the romance. But like, even as it's doomed, you're kind of like, well, maybe it could. Well, no, I don't see any way that this could work out okay. And it's something that I think is you just don't see portrayed with such nuance and dignity, or at least I don't.
No, and you know, it really shows this film, along with Sunset Boulevard and Sweet Small Success, shows how like the entertainment industry just breaks people down, wears them down, turns them into empty husks of people. You know, it renders them cynical and you know, just sort of bleh. You know, and if there's one thing Hollywood loves, it's movies about movie making. You know, just like writers love writing novels about writers, directors and screenwriters love writing movies about movies.
I also think
what you know, kid.
Sunset Boulevard and All About Eve, like both coming out the same year. Like the kind of person that excels, you know, creatively in the Hollywood atmosphere is also the kind of person who both has a deep insecurity, usually a deep vulnerability, and also like a fragile psyche. So all of these people, as they're getting sponged out and kind of used, they're not usually the strongest, you know, the strongest mentally or the strongest emotionally. I mean, maybe their emotions are strong, but like, you know, the best at controlling their emotions of everybody in the world. Like this kind of creativity comes at the price of kind of giving a lot of the people who are best at it like a very fragile psyche. And all of those movies are great in showing the ways that that Hollywood wrings out those kinds of fragile psyches. Like Hollywood just destroys them because of course it does. And this is at a moment where, you know, the golden age of Hollywood, like people were not prepared for this level of fame in their lives. Or like
no, how could they be?
No.
Yeah,
It was
new.
Yeah. Like there was no like, hey, this is how you handle, like assistants and of course, have assistants and agents or whatever, or new as well. Like it's like you have to learn on the spot how to handle fame.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And people
that's
have to
also
learn
still true now, and that's probably why these films like Sunset Boulevard and In a Lonely Place, they stand out as still deeply watchable because of these themes are still things that we know actors deal with. Hollywood is still kind of the same sort of way, even though it's how many years later?
Like a young actor starting up, and then they
74.
finally have like the film that does it for them, and they're constantly, and then they're starring like all the leads, and like the new Hollywood with the Timothée Chalamet and the Florence Pughs and the Anya, Taylor Joys, and Jacob Elordi and Barry Keoghan, like those, we're hearing about them all the time now because they're the new class of this newer Hollywood, and they're going to be in every freaking movie now.
Well, just like there is for every generation, look at like the Brat Pack in the 80s, so on and so on. But anyway, Letterboxd.
Wait. The last point I want to make.
That's a perfect layup.
The last point I wanted to make. So the last point I wanted to make was if you look at something like Sunset Boulevard and then a movie like The Substance, right? That like we're going to be talking about at the end of the month. Like the same themes are running through them. This feeling that Hollywood has kind of left you behind, that you're decaying pretty much, that your body is no longer wanted by the screen that used to plaster you all over it. You see the same themes run through both of them. Anyway, Letterboxd.
Go ahead, Kristina. Did you have something? Oh, no. Okay. All right.
I wanted to say something.
KT, go ahead.
That's actually what takes Grahame out. She winds up doing so much plastic surgery to herself, she becomes almost unrecognizable.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's so obsessed with how she looks.
Also, Demi Moore looks so good for her age. I'm like, why would they want someone younger? She looks good.
I just saw a clip of Ellen Green, Audrey from Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah.
Performing at it was the Out for Kamala Harris event in, I want to say Philly. And she was performing somewhere that's green, and she looks and sounds just as good as she did in 1986. I mean, it's unbelievable.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that. Usually you're like, and then she looked like a plastic surgery monster. She has aged beautifully, and she looks awesome. And she sounds just like she did back then. Like nothing's changed. She's just it was so good.
News we need.
Letterboxd is a social media site for film lovers talk at, with, and to each other about the movies that they love, maybe the movies that they didn't love, maybe the movies that they quoted one of the most iconic lines in all of Noirdom in multiple times over, and that's the review. That's just the review. It's just that line. And it's a great one. Don't get me wrong, but really, that's all you got to say about it? Okay. And of course, everybody gets to chime and opine, not just Siskel's and Eberts of the world. By the way, Roger Ebert, love this movie. 5 stars he gave it. Big thumbs up. Big thumbs up for In a Lonely Place. But everybody gets to have their say. Everybody gets to have their take on the movies in question. And of course, all of this is best expressed for the purposes of this bit succinctly, because they are collected weekly by yours truly for us to read and react to on the screen. These are the Letterboxd one-liners for In a Lonely Place. Let's go. Gotta give me some Venetian blinds.
He even makes Venetian blinds sound so fucking cool. He's like, shouldn't have closed my Venetian blinds. Like, oh man. I also really like I really like the line where he's like, you can see directly into my apartment, but I can't see into yours. And she's like, I won't abuse the privilege. And he goes, I would if I were you.
Yeah. So great. So good. Love it. I'm here for it. Cool. Men would rather blow with Gloria Grahame than go to therapy. Shaking my head.
3.5 is a crime.
Yeah. There's more.
Yeah.
Coming for you, Jerry. So much sadness etched onto Humphrey Bogart's gin-ravaged face.
Yeah. And by this point, it was kind of getting there more and more, right? Like, it wasn't as much as like the mid-50s. But
once you get to like Barefoot Contessa, it's just forget it.
Yeah.
Gotta get that 4K so you can really see it.
Oh yeah.
It's like
Like a topographical map of Oklahoma. It's just like, ugh.
my tag for that is a good thing for him. We live in a patriarchy. There you go. I love when Fran gets up and leaves during the big bad dinner. Okay, see ya.
Yeah, like her character. Like every time he's about to have like one of his episodes, she's like, "And I'm out."
And bye.
Look, I came here because I was horny, but I'm good.
Nope,
the vibes are off.
The vibes are definitely off. Dix Steele drives like a high school water polo player that just got into a fight with his stepdad outside an Olive Garden.
Yeah. I like
no notes.
A lot of tangential characters in Dix Steele's life, whether it's Fran or whether it's the wife of Rub. Like, there's these characters that know that this guy is literally a fucking minefield. Like,
yeah, he's the worst.
Will go off in a second, and yet they still do this thing where they're like, "Oops, I shouldn't have said whatever that thing was," and it's like, "Oops, are you guys trying to get this guy to?"
Yeah, hey, trying to wind him up.
He's like, I used to sleep with him. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you think?
You know what you were saying.
Yeah, come on. What are you doing here? If you put that much sugar on your grapefruit, then you definitely are a psychopath.
It's true.
Yeah,
it's a lot of sugar.
But it's a damn good love scene.
Yeah. Where was the best supporting actress nom for Gloria Grahame's eyebrows?
They were on fleek.
They put in work.
They were doing the work. That's true. Not wrong.
It's pre-Botox era, I guess. Like,
it's very eyebrows. Bogart had these head veins that made it look like his skull was about to burst right through his skin. 4 stars.
That wasn't even acting. That was just his.
That's what he looks like. Yeah.
So wait, was it not 5 stars because there weren't enough head veins?
More head veins, more stars, I guess. I don't know. That's a good question.
More head veins, more stars. That's what I know to say.
That's a winning recipe in Hollywood, kid. First ever nonchalant dreadhead was recorded in this movie. We've been replicating this man's behavior for over 70 years.
Amen.
Yep. But nobody ever did it as well as he did.
That's right.
No.
That's right. Badass who happens to be a screenwriter. Starring Bogey and he drinks gin and tonics. Beats up guy at a bar and orders hams and eggs. Drives like a masshole, blames everyone else. Is Dix Steele my hero?
Can confirm the masshole part.
When you spell it out like that, it really was just Humphrey Bogart playing Humphrey Bogart.
Yeah. Just doing his thing, man.
He loves ham and eggs and beating up guys.
And
who doesn't?
I thought about that scene in particular and was like, he probably paid 15 cents for that meal, and I just got very sad.
Oh man,
we used to be a country.
I thought this was America.
Those are the Letterboxd one-liners for In a Lonely Place. Please follow us. Movie Night Extra for our Letterboxd HQ account, where we're logging all of the great movies that we cover on here as stories and reviews, lots more bonus content and things along those lines coming as well at Movie Night Extra. The pre-war screenwriter over there, Forrest, at Always Flacco. He's logging stuff from this show as well. On Letterboxd, you can follow him, see what he's up to. Like the fact you just rewatched Rebel Without a Cause. Great. I would love to rewatch that. That sounds awesome. Conan Neutron, at Conan Neutron. Answers in the third ring when he's not home. What I'm saying. It's a great line. It's a great line, even though nobody answers anything ever anymore, including myself. I am on Letterboxd. You can follow me at Conan Neutron, doing the highbrow, the midbrow, the populist fare. Finished up Criterion Challenge 2024.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, plenty of more stuff coming up. And looking forward to logging all of that, so you can follow me along for that. And then when the new Criterion Challenge is coming up, KT, I think you're going to do it with me, right? So I think we're going to maybe live stream the picks on that, which I think should be fun. Or
I'll do it for the first time ever. I'll do it. Yeah.
Fantastic. I love it. So, of course, KT at Movie Runtime.
Another thing to be doing, you know?
Yeah.
No, you don't have enough things to be done.
You caught me in a year of yes. I have to say yes to everything this year.
I mean, I do find a way to make work for myself out of literally everything I enjoy somehow. I don't know. It's a special superpower of mine.
I like the idea that there's the Sphinx or whatever, and then like answer these 2 questions. And Katie's like, all right, I guess I'll answer I'll ask the 3 questions. Fuck.
Fucking year of yes.
It's a year of yes.
It's a year of yes. Got to say yes to it. At Movie Runtime on Letterboxd, and you're doing a major catch up right now with like a whole bunch of stuff that you'd not really rate anything substantive for, but it's great. It's been great to see. You love to see it.
Thank you. I rated a bunch of films and then I didn't write a review, and I feel like that's a coward's game.
Yeah, I just re-reviewed Pearl because I did the whole X trilogy rewatch recently.
There you go.
I'm watching the X trilogy for our next episode. I've seen scenes of it. I don't think I've seen a single one of the full movies.
All right, let me get out of this bit. Come on. Adam, Kristina down there. She just told you what she's up to, so follow her. She's doing that. Harry Marks, my newest Letterboxd friend, is HC Marks on Letterboxd, so please follow him. He does indeed have Sweet Smell of Success very high. I did buy that Blu-ray, by the way, and it comes with a book that has it's like newspaper style. It's pretty. The Mishima one was definitely the most impressive, but the Sweet Smell of Success one was like right up there. Yep. It was pretty cool.
It's a good one.
And then I think
50% off this month at Barnes & Noble.
I was gonna say brought to you by Criterion apparently, but yeah, go get it because like some of these is like, oh, that's a reasonable price now. Great, you know. Okay, what do we got? Forrest for you gonna read out the November films? I think we got.
This is what we're doing. This is what we're doing for November. This November on Movie Night Extravaganza. On November 4th, we're talking about In a Lonely Place with Harry Marks. On November 12th, we're talking about Ty West Pearl with Lawrence Bernard. On November 15th, we're going to be interviewing director Adam McKay. On November 19th, we're going to be discussing Rainer Warner Fassbinder's World on a Wire with Marty McFly as per the results of our bracket episode. On November 26th, before Thanksgiving, we're talking about J.T. Molner's Strange Darling. And on November 29th, right after Thanksgiving, it's time to talk about The Substance. Turkey is out. Shrimp cocktail is in. If you're watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe, and then hit the bell to get notified whenever we're streaming. And we'd humbly request that you watch the video to the end because it helps us with the algorithm and helps more film fans to discover the show. We're also monetized. If you want to get your chat questions definitely read on stream, you can always send us a super chat, which will help us keep the show going. Every cent helps. If you're watching on Twitch, you can gift us a free sub on Amazon Prime with your Prime membership, but getting subs on Twitch is always appreciated, and it helps to follow us on there as well. We also have an audio feed, which is available wherever you download podcasts, if you prefer to listen to podcasts rather than watch the stream. That's updated usually the same day we stream, but watching on YouTube and Twitch is the best way to get the show first, live as it happens. If you want to support us with a monthly donation and get access to all of our after parties forever, which go patron only after we do them, you can become a patron at patreon.com/movie night extra. Link is in the description for that. It really helps us keep the show going since we do have some expenses to make this happen. We also have a Discord community. Link is in the description for that. We sometimes watch movies we cover on there. We get into conversations about everything from film to TV shows to related podcasts. We even have a Discord channel for memes. It's really fun on there. You can find us on all the social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, Twitter, and Threads. You connect with us on all of those. Talk to us. We'd love to hear from you. Lastly, we recently made a TikTok at Movie Night Extra where we're putting up short-form clips from the episodes. Okay, passing this to Conan so he can tell you about his music and this week's Protonic Reversal. Conan, who's on Protonic this week?
That's right. So the Sugar Horse episode, I only had like 5 minutes to prepare for that. I blew it on the first word. Amazing. Sugar Horse episode is up, and in the general feed, the Kino Motel episode, which is Ed and Rosa from Australia. They're totally awesome. That's coming up next. That's in the Patreon feed right now. And then also Steve Moriarty of The Gits, who also wrote the book on Mia Zapata, is also in the Patreon feed right now. So there's a couple deep in Patreon feeds. No Protonic this week because I will be on tour. So I'm going to be playing Columbus, Ohio with God Bullies, and Louisville, Kentucky with God Bullies and Rated I, and then St. Paul with Dead Bob and Lung, and Chicago with Dead Bob and Lung. Dead Bob, of course, being John Wright from No Means No's new band, and they're fantastic. So that's why I will not be talking about Pearl with the rest of the crew next week, and I'm sure you will do a fine job without me, especially with Lauren. That's going to be awesome. But that is what
comes in cosplay.
She does a lot of them. Yeah.
She did Pearl, for Halloween.
I saw it, and that's when I was like, "Hey, you should have her on." And then it turns out that I was already in motion. So great.
Yeah.
So that's what's going on with me. NeutronFriends.bandcamp.com. If you're in any of those cities, come out and say hello. And Kristina, what do you got?
Yeah. So for those who don't know, my PC is completely damaged because I was dog sitting a dog here and she spilled coffee all over it. It's completely busted, unfortunately. So I'm gonna have to get a new one eventually with money. But tomorrow, starting at 1 p.m. Eastern, Dan from the Web and I and a bunch of other guests are going to be covering the election. And then later that night, we're going on with the Leftist Mafia to cover it with them. We're gonna have
what time are you gonna start drinking on for election night?
I'll probably start drinking at 5.
We'll see how the results go.
Today count? Can I get drunk today?
Yeah,
and just let
exactly.
it slide
Carry it
into
over.
mine?
Yeah, you
keep the party going.
Bottomless mimosas on. Go back to brunch, maybe. I don't know.
Save the really hard stuff if it doesn't go the way you want. Yeah.
Also, too, I think we're putting our Christmas decorations down, which means Christmas decorating stream.
Oops.
Hi, Forrest.
Did I do that?
I don't know.
Did I do that?
Leaned on a button. Sorry.
I already started.
I leaned on a button because the keyboard was falling and it made Forrest really big.
I leaned on a button because the keyboard was falling.
Well, you remember what happened last time, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my Christmas tree. It's basically just no leaves. It's very gothic, and I'm gonna put decorations, on it. Like
nice.
That wasn't me. That's
Christmas.
But no, this on purpose, so we can see.
Yeah. She's this person talking. Yeah.
So you're doing
That's a good idea. We should. You know what? I would hate that if it was squares, but the circles, I like it. Circles.
Yeah.
It reminds me again of like the Carol Burnett show or something.
Yeah.
Tim Conway. All right. Tim Conway, everybody. That's the joke. Tim Conway.
I know. I grew up watching Carol Burnett
show. Yeah. So you're going to be on stream for like 20 hours.
Yeah.
Tomorrow. Okay. Cool.
Do you guys think that they're gonna actually call it tomorrow night, or do you think this? We'll talk about the after party. Let's talk about
that's classic after party
one
material.
prediction, and I agree with Matt Bender on it, so I'll discuss it.
And you need to tune in the after party to hear all of these things.
Yeah. Exactly.
Harvey Korman or bust. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
KT, you got any plugs to plug right now?
I just released the What If I Don't Like It episode for Dusk Till Dawn, which is a real delight. You can get to listen to my sister and I kind of banter back and forth about the experience, where we watched the first half of the movie the year it came out in 1996 when I was 11 and she was 13. And then our brother stopped us from watching it when it gets to the part where he goes, pussy, pussy, pussy. And we never watched the rest of it. Well, we watch the rest of it together and we talk about our experience. It's a real fun one. It's not super long.
I think you would have liked it way better if he had just let it play.
Let it go.
Yeah.
It's also, and I'm glad you discovered this in real time, halfway through the movie. That is not like, it's not the beginning at all.
We both thought it was like 3 minutes. And we had paired it with watching 12 Monkeys just before. So my sister was like so mad that we were allowed to watch all of 12 Monkeys and then we couldn't watch this because of boobs. So that episode is out. I also just had an episode come out today with Goodwill Podcasting. We all talk about Tom Hanks movies that we picked that we thought were kind of important. We also talked about seeing here. Mileage may vary there. But I picked A League of Their Own because I wanted to talk about him in an ensemble performance and how he can really be very comedic and wonderful, and how we associate him with America and baseball, and how wonderful that film really is. I love Penny Marshall. I have a chicken named Henny Marshall. So there's a lot. I really love that.
The Carole King song at the end of that film is one of my favorite songs. It's so good.
Yes. I was just rewatching it. As soon as it started playing, my husband was like, Yeah, so good. So yeah, and of course, if you're following me on Movie Runtime on TikTok, or if you're following me, Little Deadly Creature, on Instagram, you're gonna catch all the other stuff that I'm doing right now, because I'm always doing stuff. Because, like I said, it's my year of yes. And then the next episode, we're gonna have Bonnie Burton. We are recording this Thursday. Bonnie Burton will watch Interview with a Vampire, which she has held off of watching since Possibility because she thinks she won't like it.
Movie.
Well, it's because she's such a big fan of the books.
Yeah.
That happened on this show, the Hunger episode, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. I love that. I can't wait to listen to that. It's gonna be awesome.
Coming soon. That's all for me. But what about you, Harry? What have you got going on right now?
So I highly encourage everyone to follow me on both Lobby Intros on TikTok and also Lobby_intros at Instagram, because I don't know what's going to happen in January. There's no word as to whether TikTok's going to be banned or not. As far as we know, it's still going to be banned, but like there's been no word as to whether that's not happening. Also, November 12th in bookstores everywhere, you can get your copy of Cabinet of Curiosities. For almost 6 years, I wrote this podcast hosted by Aaron Mahnke, and Macmillan turned the podcast, or about 300 stories of it, into a book, and it's now for sale. And I got to do my first signing the other day at NJ PAC, the New Jersey Performing Arts Center. That was wild. I signed like 100 books that night. It was very cool. Whoops. So Forrest is back. Hi,
Forrest is back. I thought I was trying to do something cool, and I absolutely did not. Hey, where'd the circles go? Damn it.
So you got to do your first ever book signing? I saw pictures. It looked like it was very well attended. I have to say that sounds so fun.
It was awesome. It was surreal. It was a very weird experience because my co-author Aaron was in town doing a live show of the podcast, and then afterwards they were selling the book at a little table sort of before drop date. So it was I didn't know that they did this, that you could buy a book before it was officially out. But if you went to the show, you could buy Cabinet of Curiosities. And I had a table with a Sharpie, and I was signing books. I felt like a big boy. It was very nice. So.
That's awesome.
Very awesome.
Oh, and I'm also on Mometu, the streaming app. I'm the classic film host for Mometu. I've got a new thing going on that I was talking about today with the head of the app. They're going to give me my own subsection of the app where I will recommend 10 films a month. So it'll be Harry's picks.
Nice.
10 films on the app that you can watch. So
that is
wonderful.
the dream.
Congratulations. I'm so happy to hear that. I love seeing you on that. You did the introduction for the Nosferatu showing that I just did in East Hampton, Massachusetts, and it was wonderful. Really love it.
Thank you.
Actually, I was talking to Goodwill Podcasting, and they said they want to have you on. They were talking about for a Nosferatu episode.
I'm going to do
their girl.
Yep.
Perfect.
I'm doing their Nosferatu episode. I'm very excited about that.
Wonderful.
That's great. We just did one earlier this month.
I was going to ask you about that, like how it went and how it was received and everything. So.
Oh, it went really, really well. It's a bar, so we had one half is the bar part, and then the other half is like an open mill. And they have a big, huge, like drop-down movie theater screen, so we can do screenings in there. And then there's a little stage so you can get up and talk to people. And we had it full up. There were about 40 people there. Everybody was really engaged in talking about the shorts that we played first, one of which was mine. And then it was such a delight because I had been talking for so much by the point when we got to start doing Nosferatu, because I had just done the full talk back, to be able to be like, and here's Harry, here's somebody else, to do a perfect introduction for this film. And people did come up to me at the end and say that the thing that we had played was really interesting and helpful and really set the stage well. You do that so
nice.
well.
Let me know if you do this again next year. I will come live. I'll wear a suit, the whole shebang. So let me know.
Yes. I did talk to the person about, we also do an annual festival. So we'll talk more.
Nice.
For sure.
Mm-hmm. All right. We have a super chat before we go to final thoughts. Comments on Peter Falk and Murder by Death.
Inspired a great band. And also hard to go wrong with Peter Falk, in my opinion. As I said as much in our Mikey and Nikki episode. I love that dude.
This film always gets compared to Clue, and I prefer Clue, but Murder by Death is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you got Truman Capote and Alec Guinness. I mean, like, it's a Peter Sellers, right?
It's a who's who. It's
yeah.
It's like it's a mad world. It's everybody's in it.
But Harry, do you have some final thoughts for In a Lonely Place?
I would love to see Peter Falk as a actual Sam Spade. If that's probably why it was put up as a super chat, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think Mitchum played Sam Spade, didn't he? Or no, he played not Sam Spade. He played in Farewell My Lovely. I can't remember the character's name now. Driving me nuts. The it was Sam Spade in The Big Sleep, right? It was
Philip Marlowe.
Philip Marlowe, that's it.
Marlowe, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, he played Marlowe. That's right. So
here's Harry with the perfect impression of Klaus Kinski. Nice.
Nice. Yeah, my last thoughts on In a Lonely Place. Like as I said before, it's Bogey's best performance in my opinion. I love Casablanca is a 5-star movie for me. It's one of my favorite films of all time. But this, I feel the same way about Bogart as I do about Keanu Reeves. He's gotten better as an actor as he's gone on. And Bogey really hits his stride, in the late 40s through the 50s.
All of his first roles are like he's playing either the most villainous guy you've ever seen.
Oh, he plays gangsters. He came up at Petrified Forest and Cagney films and stuff. Like he was playing heavies and gangsters the whole time. And once he finally gets into Casablanca, The Maltese Falcon, Return of Dr. X puts him in a horror film. He starts really expanding his horizons. But he really comes into his own, in the late 40s, early 50s, and this is just one of those performances that like defines a career. And if he was only ever remembered for this role, if Casablanca had never existed, he still would have been one of the greatest actors who ever lived. So,
word.
I think Conan feels the same way. Kristina, final thought.
Yeah, I agree with Harry about this being like Bogart's like best performance, and it's like one of the top tier standards for like a film noir. Mm-hmm. It's got everything. It's got romance. It's got murder. It's got good cinematography. Improv ending, if you will, like very improvised, and they have to change it up in the last minute. Like you don't. It's kind of hard to do that now because we learned about how they had to reshoot stuff for Bram Stoker's Dracula with Francis Ford Coppola. And I'm shocked that in the end this is definitely a metaphor for Nicholas Ray and that marriage, but I still think that it's possible that this cannot be like something that's remade. Like I like if they thought about remaking this, like there's no one who could like outperform Humphrey Bogart. I mean, people again we mentioned American Psycho, but Patrick Bateman was on like a separate type of level than Humphrey Bogart was. But I still think that this is like a really fantastic movie. People need to go watch it if they're a huge Bogart fan. And yeah, I gave this like five stars.
I think they could remake this if they adapted the novel as written and cast Michael Shannon in the role. Michael Shannon, in my opinion, is the greatest living actor right now, and he
our faces right now.
I will give you all the money to do this. Yes. Yes.
By the way, they were gonna remake it in the late 70s, but it fell apart. But I don't know any details on the fact that like they were going to remake it, and I was like, that sounds like a bad idea. Don't do that.
It would be funny if they just kept making like movies with the Humphrey Bogart kind of character, and they just kept on casting Elliot Gould to play that.
Oh my god!
Throughout the years, fantastic.
That's right. Someone asked me recently, about. Who do you think could play Bogey in a biopic? And my first response was Michael Shannon. I think he's so unique looking. He could get the voice close enough, you really want a pastiche of Bogart. You don't want like dead on, doing the the nasal drawl and all that. But you want someone who can sort of capture that essence, and I think he could do it perfectly.
There is a thing. I guess you call it a streaming series, television. I don't know what the hell you would call it, but with him and Jessica Chastain, where it was called George and Tammy, where he was George Jones and Jessica Chastain.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
And not only was it very good, I was like, he pretty much became George Jones. Like that's a weird dude to like try to portray. Like there's like a lot of kind of like nuance to him too. And
He's
I was
a
like,
good impressionist.
Respect. Yeah.
I also feel like Boardwalk Empire wouldn't have worked without Michael Shannon.
Oh yeah, that character
really
is
melting into like the 1920s. Like,
did you ever see him? Did you ever see him read the sorority letter from like 10 years ago? He did it on YouTube. There's like a really sinister sorority letter.
So. Yeah, I think didn't Funny or Die put that out or something?
Yes, exactly. He's like sitting in a chair with a spotlight on him, and he's reading this verbatim, and it's one of the funniest and most terrifying things I've ever heard.
Oh wow.
We got to let's look that up in the after party.
Sounds great.
Yes.
KT, final thoughts.
We're talking about this film from so many great angles. We're talking about like if you want a good Bogart film, if you want a good noir film. To add on to that, something that's so prevalent right now is people who love true crime. And as someone who loves true crime and as someone who writes horror movies, I definitely felt there but go the grace of I feeling when he was describing how he thought the murder would go down. Because I'm like, yeah, you have to get into that headspace to write it really well. And you kind of have to enjoy getting into that headspace. And all of us true crime people enjoy getting into that headspace. So if you're listening to this and you're a true crime person, a lot of people are, I invite you to watch this movie and maybe have the mirror held up to your face a little and see like, oh God, what depths? I mean, there's a fantastic book called Il Monstro di Firenze, which is about the hunt for the monster of Florence, for which Hannibal Lecter is based on. And my favorite line in the book is, there is only a question of degree, a kind, not degree, as to what monsters people have in themselves. Everyone is a monster. And this really shows you that. So if you want to see how much of a monster you would be and how much you relate to it, come watch this movie. It was a real ride.
I also feel like it's really hard to get like the same vibe as like a Hitchcock movie, and I feel like that's that like the nail on the head with that too, like the way that he describes that murder. And I feel like the kind of people that are into true crime now, like Hitchcock movies, were like the original kind of some of them at least the original version of that. Like it had like this weird universal and macabre appeal to people. Yeah, and this movie kind of captures that, especially within that one scene. But Conan, I know you're dying. This is your favorite Bogart movie. This is you want to say your final thoughts. Let's hear them.
I mean, a lot of it's already been said, but I mean, I think this is full of great dark visuals, resting anxiety. The script is so chock full of snappy, caustic one-liners, and I just love that it's one of the darkest characters that Bogart ever played. I think Gloria Grahame's super excellent in this as well. I love that all the characters are very human. They're full of insecurities and self-deception, half-truths. But there is such poetry to all the misery and ennui to go around. Like I said it during the show, I love that Dix didn't commit the crime, but even his friends think that he could have. That's amazing to me. I love that nobody is hero or villain, but somewhere in between. And he's, charming as can be sometimes, but frightening and violent at others. And this is a film about the violence in all of us. And I stand by my assessment that he's never a monster, but he is a man that acts like a monster sometimes. And I think this is my favorite noir movie. And one of my favorites, 5 stars, easy, but easy. I think it's top 20. It might be top 20. Great to cover it. I've been wanting to cover it for years. So Harry, thank you so much for being on it. It was
my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
This is one of those surprising Bogart movies I haven't seen and or even really heard of until you were bringing it up and talking about it. So and I consider myself like a nice Bogart connoisseur. So
I'm something of a connoisseur myself.
All right, well, we're gonna jump to the after party in 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, join us.
Yeah.